Internet. It is November 15th of 2011. I haven't posted a video for a while, so I decided I'd try and put one up. It should be over a little bit. I'd like to preface this video by saying that, unlike minimizing the suck, this video is less of an absolute that has far-reaching implications for humanity as a whole, and is more just my personal opinions on the matter. So, bearing that in mind, I'm going to start talking to you about education. This is a subject that is very near and dear to my heart. Well, first, as I usually do, start with kind of a historical overview of education. Ever since we've been passing our knowledge on to our young, education has been around in some form or another. But there was sometime around the Industrial Revolution a drastic change in the manner in which we educated people, and I think this had very far-reaching repercussions, not all of which have been particularly positive. Because you get out of the Industrial Revolution, we got the idea of grading, of grades. I believe I was reading on the infowebs that it came from a mill owner of some sort, or a shoe plant or something, and he started grading his workers on their ability to make shoes. And this was a way to more effectively make good shoes, because you say, oh, there's a good shoe, there's a bad shoe, whatever, by grading on certain criteria, and you could grade lots of people very efficiently. And this then went and got extrapolated into the educational arena, when they started grading students. And in this manner, one teacher can have many students, and you can grade them all, and you started getting large lecture halls and stuff like that. And rather than having education be kind of an intimate and subjective dialogue between student and teacher, it became more of a instructor giving information out and students being responsible for understanding that information and being able to regurgitate it back. And I think that's kind of a big distinction to make, because before this, education was about imparting knowledge, and now education is less about the knowledge and more about imparting facts. And there's a big distinction between the two. Understanding something and being able to answer something is not really the same thing. Because really, to answer a question properly, you just need to know what the teacher is looking for, or what the question is looking for the answer. You don't need to understand anything further than that. You just have to, 1, know what the answer is, 2, be able to recognize when they're asking for that answer. And nowhere in that is really you have to understand anything about that. And the other thing about that is that learning is very subjective by nature. We are all very different, different pasts, different cultures, different values and opinions on things, and just because there is one way of learning something, or because something is established as true or fact, it does not make it so. And just because the teacher happens to think that this is the right answer, it is only the right answer in a limited context. Depending on the perspective employed, the right answer can be pretty much anything you want. And this is something that modern education really, it doesn't even begin to broach on. Maybe in philosophy and English classes you can touch on this stuff, but this should be pervasive and taught all the way through, because this is how reality works. But Salavis, that's how education kind of used to go. Is you had very smart people teaching people to know, imparting knowledge, but now it is more about memorizing facts and figures and stuff like that. And I think we as a society really need to ask, what do we want from our educational system? Do we want to produce a bunch of people who can tell us what the tensile strength of steel is, and how much of that we need to support 2 people hanging from a rope? Or do we want people to understand the applications of that, or the values of that? And the thing is, we can look up facts. I think an encyclopedia or the infoweb is a much better venue for storing facts than a human brain. Don't get me wrong, human brain is very good at storing facts and store all kinds of it, but I think it's kind of a waste. I think we should stick to our strengths, which is pondering stuff, recognizing patterns, and let storage media, which is good at storing things, deal with storing the facts. I mean, some stuff you're going to have to know, but I'm just saying in general. I don't think that our education system should go that way, and that's how it's been trending over the last 100 years. So, getting away from history, going more towards practical. We make people learn and I'm going to limit myself to public education for this topic because I went to a public school, I did not go to a private school, I can't speak for them. I assume it's the same, but I'll be fair to them and say this is applying to public school. What do we make people learn? You know what? I'm going to step back just one step from that. We make people learn. Here in the United States, we require that all students, all kids, learn a certain set of information, which in a country that is as freedom-loving as the United States is just an insane notion. The fact that the government is saying, or the government said at one point, listen, you can raise your kids however you want, but they have to at least know this shit, and there is no way of getting around that. That's crazy. I mean, for the government to go in and mess with our child rearing in such a manner, don't get me wrong, I think it's great, but it's nuts in the idea of how hopped up we are in freedom that the government can, kind of mess with us like that. I say mess with, I mean help us out, because I really do think it is a good thing. But what are we making our students learn in school? And I think this is kind of an important lesson that doesn't get touched on enough. I'm actually going to post a link to a guy who's done a lot more actual work on the matter than I have. He's got studies and shit like that all peppered in there, stuff that you can review if you really want to. But the idea is basically, what lessons are the public schools teaching? The goal of a public school is to educate the students, but unfortunately with the grading system you only get the goal for the student is to get a good grade. Understanding the material or actually getting educated isn't the same as getting a good grade. There's a difference between those two, and that is something that students learn fairly quickly, I think, in a public school. And I'll give you my classic example. You have a student who is in a math class, we'll say it's a geometry class, and he is apt student, likes geometry, learns it very well, understands all the geometric concepts, but he doesn't like taking tests. So he misses a couple of them, and he does poorly on one of them, and he ends up getting an F for the class. This has a lot of very real and immediate repercussions. Even though the student is perfectly capable of doing geometry and understands the concepts involved in it, because he didn't play within the system, one, he is not able to learn any more math. Our progressive nature of education means that he cannot move on to whatever the next math is in series until he passes this class. So one, even though he's fine with math, you don't get to be taught anymore. Okay, you do not get to learn anything else until you play the system and get a decent enough grade to progress further. And that really shifts the focus away from learning. And it encourages a lot of things that I don't think we shouldn't be encouraging in our younger kids. Cheating, working around the system, working outside the box. And not thinking outside the box, I mean working outside the box. Understanding that the classroom is kind of a bubble, but really all that matters is getting the teacher to give you a good grade. And once you're focusing on how am I going to get the teacher to give me a good grade, you are not focusing on learning. And that should be the focus of our education, is imparting knowledge to our students, not just memorization of facts, not just reciting stuff. And that really gets lost when we're doing the grading system. And generally it is very hard to quantify education, mainly because the right answers are hard to come by, especially on a test, or when there's no dialogue, when there's no there's no context involved. If you do not have a chance to go back and forth, you can't really get what's going on inside your people's heads. I understand it's time consuming. You cannot do that kind of education when you have classes of 30, 40 students. That's sad that our teacher to student ratio has gotten so high, and we've invested so little in education that is the case now, that grading is the only way that we can have any sort of accountability for our education. But it is not a good system to go with from a practical standpoint. But I'm not all doom and gloom. I'm going to move on now to ideas to improve. First idea to improve: more education. I know that's kind of counterintuitive. I'll get to improving the educational quality in a second, but I think that 1 to 12 is nowhere near enough. I think we should tack on another 5, probably 10 years worth of education on top of that. And people think, oh, F that, if I wanted more education, I'd go to college. No. Educated people are generally better for society. I know that is a baseless and unfounded statement, but the more you look into it, you'll find out, generally speaking, that's pretty true. Most of our violent offenders are uneducated or less educated people, and most of our underprivileged people, less educated people. Now, I'm not saying that it is the undereducated people's fault that is the matter. Obviously, there are socioeconomic things involved and factors outside their control that are contributing to that. What I'm saying is, more education is better. Secondly, we need more of a holistic approach to education and not learning in a vacuum. Subjects are very interconnected. Obviously, science plays along very well with math, which plays along very well. Well, science and math play along very well together. They're very closely integrated. But you have to understand that it's all based on perceptions, and that kind of goes into a philosophical standpoint, which has changed from a historical standpoint. All these things kind of roll together. Now, I'm not saying that your physics teachers would stop mid-class to go on a philosophical rant, but we need to have respect to this. It needs to at least be addressed as we go through school. That we're all individuals. We are not compartmentalized the way education is. I understand that from a scheduling standpoint, it's a lot easier to say, okay, we're going to learn this for an hour, then we're going to learn that for an hour, then we're going to learn this for an hour. But it's very inorganic and I don't have the word for it. Very inorganic and well, it's a bad way to do it. You should generally try a more holistic way to learn. And the other thing is, and this is more for our educators, gotta stop dealing with so many damn absolutes. Seriously. And I know the grading kind of forces you to do this, because at some point you have to say, well, either it's right or it's wrong. And I know you can deal, well, maybe extra credit, whatever, but at some point you have to apply your value scale to an answer. And that's not a position that any teacher should really be in. Because basically, we know now most things are a matter of perception. If you want to go quantum style with relatively, pretty much everything is a matter of perspective. Depending on how you view it, you can get completely different answers to the exact same question, and they will both be technically right. This makes testing pretty much impossible to do, because how are you going to grade tests properly if pretty much any answer could be technically right? It's just a matter of looking for it. Well, once we get rid of grading, this will cease to be a problem. But we need to stop, teachers need to stop going with the mentality that, oh, this is right, this is wrong, so on and so forth. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, we should just give every answer little Johnny right, but what I'm saying is, instead of just having a piece of paper, fill it out and rubber stamp it, we should go engage with the students, actually get some time to figure out what's going on in the head and go from there. Obviously, that's time intensive, labor intensive. We're going to need a lot more manpower to do that. Probably very money intensive, but my answer to that is my answer to most things that are worth doing. Is it better that we spend 2 hours a day watching what's going on in Hollywood, or who's dating whom, or who had a sex scandal? I don't know. I think the trade-off is pretty good there. We could take a little bit less people involved in producing that kind of entertainment, a little more into education, and I think we'd all work out a lot better. So that's my rant on education. I am going to post a link for some studies and stuff like that kind of support what I'm trying to say. And thank you for your time. I'll try and post more videos as I see fit.